But I have a thought though, just the one.
Just the one? What is it?
You do that. You spend your $17.99. You get the hospital bed. You slap on a different texture and put it in your game.
Mm-hmm.
Can you really call that your own?
That's a good question, because technically you own it because you bought it. But yeah, I can understand that. Is this, if you retexture this, if you reshade this, how much of it belongs to you?
Yeah.
And how much of it belongs to True Blue Studios, not related to Studio Blue?
Right.
You know, and this is where, guys, we really do want to hear your opinion.
Yeah.
Because there is no right or wrong. It's what do you believe makes something what makes it an asset flip? What makes it a non-asset flip?
Yeah.
What makes this a legitimate? At what point can someone legitimately use this in their game project and satisfy your personal requirements that they haven't just flipped an asset into their game?
And put it in their game and not give a credit.
Right.
Not give a credit to True Blue Studios.
True Blue Studios, right.
Yeah.
Did True Blue, and of course, you know, did True Blue Studios sell the rights? When you buy this, do you have the rights to use it without crediting them? You know, legally speaking, every single place is going to handle it differently. Every single asset creator is going to handle it differently. But I do want to hear what people have to say.
Let's see. Burke. Burke says an asset flip is just someone throwing the asset as is into their game and calling it a day.
Okay. It's a properly licensed asset, says Moogle, and you modify it. I think it's perfectly valid, but credit should be given. Yeah, I agree.
Credit should be given.
I agree. I agree with both Burke and Moogle. If someone just takes an asset, throws it into their game without any attempt to make it their own, then they are technically flipping that asset. I would say the gray area exists on small things that you're using incidentally just to round out in order to make it faster for you.
Like that computer keyboard.
Yeah, I'm going to go over and open that up.
There's not very many places in, I'm just going to say Phasmophobia, that has a computer keyboard.
Right. You know, should I spend my entire time recreating all of this if this is going to be on screen for 5 seconds?
In just maybe 3 maps.
Right, and maybe
Total.
3 maps, right.
Total.
Maybe I pan this and the main character's at their keyboard working on something, but then you never see it again past this. Is it an asset flip if I put this in as is and then just move on with my life? I saved myself probably a lot of time, but this is never going to be used beyond this moment.
Right.
And that's it. Again, using that word philosophically. Is this...
Or here's another thought.
Okay.
Hey, you see that computer keyboard.
Okay.
Let's say you're in a high school type map.
Okay.
And there's a couple of classrooms that are that have computers in them with keyboards.
Right.
If you throw all the same keyboard in there like that, is that a bad thing?
Yeah, what if you color it like a really, instead of this color, which, oh my gosh, who remembers the keyboards used to be colored like that,
They
right?
did, yeah.
You make it like sort of a dull gray. Let's see, KV says, the line for saying no credit needed gets blurry the more the asset is modified.
True.
It's like saying the ship has all the wood replaced, nobody will recognize it due to the changes, so is it really even the same asset anymore? I mean, they actually make a joke out of it in Half-Life Alyx. As you modify the starting gun, which belongs to Russell, Alex says that this is less and less his gun, more their gun, and eventually says, all right, Russell, there's no more of your gun here. This is my gun.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a joke, but in the end, how long is it when you're modifying something until it's no longer the person who created it, but yours? It's a blurry line.
It is a blurry line. Yeah.
For me personally, if I saw a developer take this stuff right here and put it into a part of their game that is very brief, very incidental or very isolated, I wouldn't call it a flip, and I would not give this person the slightest bit of guff for putting this as is without any changes. I would prefer they change it. I would really prefer that they make things a little different here and there to add flavor so it doesn't look like the exact same game I saw someone else make. But I don't think I'd harangue someone for that.
That's the danger of using an asset from the store as is. A lot of other people are using it too.
Yes.
And so then your game just looks like one of the pack.
Let me go ahead and bring up
and
the most...
and your game fails to be unique, and it fails to impress.
Let me bring up the most egregious example in Phasmophobia.
Okay.
Anybody recognize this? This is a lobby for Phasmophobia with obviously some changes.
Yeah.
But everything in the lobby for Phasmophobia is here on this map. And it was so obvious that another game, which was completely different, it was some like horror PvP, I don't remember the exact game, uses the exact same set as their lobby in order to prove a point. So, yeah, you run that risk. Not only do you run that risk of people, like what Teal said, your game looking like everyone else's, but you run the risk of people calling you out.
Yeah, and call outs are not fun. Burke has a good point here.
Okay.
As Burke says, as long as the asset works with the environment and what you're trying to convey, it can be left as modified or as changed as you need. But throwing stuff willy-nilly, Burke still has issues with RPG Maker games where they have one aim in the tile sets and suddenly you see Akeshic's artwork, which is very good, but can run counter to what has been built by the rest of the environment beforehand.
Yeah, that is a huge issue.
Yeah.
And moving over to 2D, specifically RPG Maker, but a lot of tile games can be like that. RPG Maker creates the biggest sins. The RPG Maker community has a massive amount of store-bought and free assets available. And the number of games that I have personally seen where they have one part of the game is first seed materials, one part of the game is RTP, then you have Akeshic's battlers.
Yep.
And they don't work together.
They don't work together. Yeah, he's like, are you even trying?
And it really looks bad.
Yeah.
And I cannot tell you the number of games that I have played in RPG Maker that do that. And it's very I wish my avatar could make that face.
I can't tell you the number of RPG Maker games I've seen that have that one potted plant. The one potted tree.
And the thing is this.
And it's just, they don't even, it's not changed, it's nothing. It's that one potted tree.
Yeah.
Just as is, cut and pasted. And you see it so many times. Like, you guys can try.
The big influencers and streamers in the RPG Maker community are constantly giving out the same piece of advice. And I'm going to repeat it again so that it's official. If you're going to be a game developer, you have to learn a number of skill sets. You have to learn how to program somewhat. You have to learn how to compose music somewhat. You have to learn how to do artwork somewhat. And all of these skills are needed to really be a solo game developer. Yeah, there may be things that you're better at than other things. There may be things that you specialize in, etc., etc. But you have to be able to have a bit of a jack-of-all-trades mindset. And one of those things is taking a PNG file from the thing you just purchased, bringing it into GIMP, and recoloring it so it doesn't look like everything else from that DLC.
Yeah.
Including the potted plant.
The dreaded potted plant.
There is literally no reason why anyone out there working in that engine cannot bring something into GIMP and change the color.
Yeah.
At the very least.
It's so easy to do.
So easy.
Yeah.
Also, a good thing is a lot of these DLCs you can Franken-sprite a bit. You can kind of take potted plant and put it in that pot. You can take this painting and put it in that frame. You can do that really easily without people realizing it. Burke says, Yanfly plugins are now with that's Visual Stella. Then again, do the assets to tell your tale. Right. There is no cut and dry. There's no right or wrong. It's just, where's that line and how close are you going to get to not using anything of your own to make your game.
And then on the other side, how many weeks are you going to spend making all custom artwork, everything from scratch?
Yeah. Because that's a big deal. Now, for something like a rapid prototype or a game jam, this is not as important. I mean, let's say for the game jam, you're trying to really stretch your programming skills. You're not going to want to spend a ton of time making store-bought assets into your custom assets. Right. Especially if you're doing it by yourself. I wouldn't expect anyone making a game jam game in Unity or Unreal or Godot to spend an inordinate amount of time remaking their assets if the whole point is for them to really stretch their programming skills.
Right.
So, take that with a grain of salt. It's okay to utilize assets as is if you're just prototyping something out.
Yeah.
But please don't use the sample maps. Just don't. Don't use sample maps in RPG Maker. Don't use it in Unreal. Just don't use sample maps.
Because, guys, it's a sample map. Yeah. It's not meant to be a finished product.
Right.
It's a sample map.
Right.
Yeah.
124 weeks just learning stuff, making proofs of concept, and counting. Yeah.
And see, and Burke is, bless Burke for this. Burke is putting in a lot of hours to create custom assets and a lot of customization in their game.
And I think Human just summed it up the best. Visual assets, no one expects people to code their own engines, a sliding scale. It all comes down to how much of the tool are you going to use as it is, and how much of it are you going to create on your own. When, Human, you weren't here earlier when we were talking about AIs. People want to knock machine learning because, the AI is making stuff and not the developer. Well, all a game engine is a shortcut and a set of tools for the developer. Because technically anyone could use C++ and make an entire game, start to finish. Anyone could technically do that. But why? Use it to save time. So again, it's that sliding scale that Human's talking about. Very good point. You need to use what it is, these assets, visual, audio assets, coding assets, to make your life easier. But don't try to Franken-sprite it all together. Don't try to Frankenstein your game together.
Because at the end of the day, you're going to have a game that looks like Patchwork, Frankenstein.
If it even runs.
If it even runs, those store-bought assets are going to be recognizable.
Right, or the code. Like, let's say, I think the streamer Big Fry does this a lot, where someone will obviously take a game from, take a whole bunch of blueprints from the Unreal store, a whole bunch of assets, throw them all together into a game and hope they work. You can't do that. You can buy your blueprints from the Unreal store. You can buy your assets from the Unreal store. We bought a ton of them. But you take those and use this as a launch point. So you put in like your menu blueprint, but then you tweak the blueprint to work for your game, your vision. You don't just plop it in as is. And I think that's kind of what Burke and Human are getting at. Not to put words in your mouths, correct me if I'm wrong, is you take these things and then you tweak them to where they fit your game instead of trying to make your game fit what you just bought.
Yeah.
So, very common to make games with first-person shooter sample, even if it's against the terms of service. Yes. One of my favorite YouTubers plays a lot of indie horror games, and he can now recognize a game made in the Horror Engine, which is a free plugin available on the Unreal Engine store, because it is so obviously made in the Horror Engine.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, though, a game made in the Horror Engine not only terrified him, but made our good friend Hawk Zombie scream multiple times. That is, let me go ahead and bring the game up. This is a fantastic game, and it is created using the Horror Engine, I believe, and if I'm wrong, someone correct me. But this right here, Summer of 58. Now, I'm not saying the assets here. I'm not saying that this stuff, that these pieces here were created using stuff from Unreal. I don't know what his what the developer used to create these.
Right.
But the engine that drives moving around in exploration, I believe, is the Horror Engine, which is a free plugin, a free blueprint. This game is absolutely amazing. It is wonderful. If you like indie horror, play it. It will terrify the hell out of you, start to finish. It's about a 3-hour playthrough, if that.
Yeah.
But this is using the Horror Engine. But how they applied it, how they used it, that's what's unique. So again, the line is blurry. There's no one right or wrong way to do things, other than just flop it all in there,
grab it and throw it in as is,
and say this is my
all
game.
of it, and say this is my game.
Yeah.